On this episode of Take This Down, I sit down with Marcus Hudson and we talk about growing up in Como and the legacy that he wants to leave on his community. You're going to want to take this down. You're going to want to take this down. Well, Marcus, I want to thank you for agreeing to sit down and have this conversation with me. You know, I know we probably have not officially kind of, known each other for a while. I've known you from afar and the work that you're doing. So looking forward to having this conversation with you.
I would like to thank you for inviting me on. Thank you for the opportunity.
Now, so, a question I always ask my guests, who is Marcus at his core?
It's a good question. I'm going to say off top, I'm a pragmatist. I'm not perfect, but I do understand what's at stake, meaning, that I'm perfectly flawed. And I think I'm very self-critical of myself, and I think that's how I kind of keep myself humble and kind of keep that humility.
Man, I like that. One, you said you keep yourself humble by just kind of keeping yourself in perspective, if you will.
Yes.
Where did that come from? Is that just something you've always done, or did it take life lessons, if you will?
I would say life lessons, right? And I think my upbringing had a lot to do with that. A lot of duality in my upbringing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that. So, where'd you grow up?
Oh man, Lake Como, the one and only Lake Como, Texas. But I like to say I thought of this concept and I wanted to build off this in my own time and on my own wise. I'm like a middle-class cat that was raised in the hood. So I grew up, with a bookshelf in my house. Both of my parents were educated later in life. So I grew up knowing being stressed the importance of education, but also at the same time going outside and having to actually fight to get my bicycle back at times. So I grew up with that. And my mother at the same time would, hey, finna put on a sports coat, we going to a play. Gotcha.
I see what you mean by the duality of it, man. But, I didn't grow up in Fort Worth, and I always joke, I got here as fast as I could. But I've always heard about the pride that people have in growing up in Como. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the pride actually stems from when you talk about the Como Day Parade, if I can kind of touch on that, because that's the Como Day Parade celebrates that. And it goes back to 1905, because that's when Como started. And that was the day or the time and the year in history where we talking 42 years after slavery, to be exact, that our ancestors, our predecessors said, hey, we're going to carve out this community, right? And it's raw land. We're going to establish a community, and we're going to call it Lake Como, Texas. And I think that's where that pride comes from, right? That our ancestors, that we're actually standing on something that our ancestors actually established.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love that. Talk a little bit about the duality of one, having the family structure of pushing education, but also, having to go outside and scrap a little bit if need to. Did that, was that a complicated to navigate, or was it something that it just was your world?
Yeah, it was just the world that you didn't realize it. You didn't, in other words, I didn't realize it didn't dawn on me until I got older.
Gotcha.
Like, wow, this what this was, right? So, even becoming part of the noise out there, contributing to the dysfunction of the community, right? Even in that sense. So I'm able to, that's where the pragmatism come in at. I'm able to look at it from that perspective of that 20-year-old, 21-year-old young rowdy cat that's causing some of the noise out there, right? So, and knowing my upbringing and where I come from, right? So it was like, yeah.
How did you reconcile from, I'm gonna say, being that rowdy 20-year-old baby causing the noise to, hey, it's time to give back, build, and uplift my community?
I think part of that was, my margin of error was a little larger as a result of it, because I still had that foundation that I can resort back to. In the back of my mind, it was always that right and wrong concept. And so, as I got older and it looked like, looking at it, it was like, man, this was wrong, right? This was absolutely wrong. It was like the prodigal son. We returning back, man. Now I tell a lot of my brothers that, that we played in the streets with, regardless of what their title was in the streets, man. We caused a lot of pain. We caused a lot of destruction, and now it's time to pay back what we took.
Gotcha. I love that when you say you pay back what you took, kind of the fast forward, legacy Como. What talk a little bit about what legacy Como is and where did that, start from?
Actually, legacy started back in 2020. It wasn't something that was actually planned, to be honest. I got a call, so I'm a licensed irrigator by trade, and so I got my that field is very broad. Landscaping is very broad, and so I got a call from one of my elders. Hey, I need you to go by there and look at the cemetery. We need it mowed, right? It's like a 2-acre cemetery. So I pull up at the cemetery, make a long story short, and I just paused. It was almost, I had tears in my eyes. And it was like one of those, come on, we better than this, right? I know we better than this. The grass was above the fence line. You couldn't see the tombstones. And so I had videoed it, and I said, you know what, at that time, I'm gonna video this. I'm gonna send it to my guy, because at that time I wasn't on social media. And I'm gonna send it to one of my guys. I'm gonna say, man, we need to come out here and take care of this. This is a disgrace. It's almost like we, for lack of a better words, hey man, we pissing on these folks' grave. And the people that lay in these graves, they the reason we can say Lake Como. They are the reason you have a Como High. And this is what we doing, this is how we pay homage. Nah, this ain't right. Gotcha. So I think I made that call out. He put it on social media. I think that following Saturday in May 30th to be exact, 22 guys showed up. Some of the guys weren't even from Como. Yeah, guys was top 6 outside coming to come help clean up the cemetery to pay homage to our ancestors. And I think out of that is where legacy was born.
No, I love that. I love that. One, for you to, get a call to just, to kind of help out, but then you seeing something and, maybe you probably didn't even realize in that moment what you were about to build. No,
I didn't, actually. And I think after we cleaned it up and I cleaned up the cemetery that following Saturday, we was just sitting around just talking about things, and we just said, hey man, let's go on and continue, right? We got a responsibility here.
Gotcha. And so what does legacy stand for?
Leaders encouraging greatness among Como youth. And we turned it into an acronym. It's actually an objective, but it's a funny story. It's funny because we actually debated and sparred over the word leader, because I wanted to do something more poetic that spoke to the character of the organization, right? I wanted to use the word lion, right? Because I think the deal with the attributes of what a leader really is, right? And I think one of the top attributes of a leader is you got to give a damn. Right. You got to be bold to be a leader. So I wanted something to kind of exemplify that. But I lost out. Put my pride aside and say, hey, it's leader.
Right. Yeah. Hey, well, because ultimately it was bigger than you.
It was big, that part. It was that bigger part. Than you. It was about the work. But legacy is comprised, man. It's so, there's a saying that we use, and that we turned it into a theme for last year's Como Fest and the 4th of July. It's called Everything We Need Is in the Village. And legacy is comprised of so many different walks of life. You got cast as ex-military. You got school principals. You got youth ministers. You got ex-drug dealers. You got ex-gangbangers. You got commercial real estate brokers. You know, IT techs, cast that's been to prison. All at one table, bringing these perspectives. And that's why we try to approach the issues of the community kind of, you know, in a very common sense, pragmatic way.
You know, obviously I feel like I know, but why do you think that's important to have men or people from every different walks of life, professional stature, things like that? Why is that important for the community?
Because it gives more of that. It builds that intellectual integrity, if I may, right? Because it's, you know, you just one voice in the struggle, right? If you bring all these perspectives, he's bringing what he has to the table, he's adding what he has to the table, then we can kind of sit back and look at it and talk about it. And I think it comes up with a more realistic, doable solution.
Gotcha. Rather than just having all like-minded people, because then you're gonna be stuck in this way, and then you may be missing something.
Right.
You know, so talk a little bit about what the work that you all are doing with Legacy in the Como community.
Right. So we are broken down into, like, I don't want to, you know, I hate sounding so cliche with a mission statement. I just like to spit it how it go. So we deal with more of the politics and the economic piece of the community. We have made some slow gains in that, but some very impactful gains in that. We are able to put some of the commercial property on Horn Street back into the bloodline of the community. That's very important as we begin to kind of fight gentrification. Number two, we have the mentoring, which we'll be relaunching, a rebrand, because we kind of like, it's mentoring, but we kind of like want to dead that word this upcoming fall. We want to use the word empowerment, right? So we also have a health and fitness initiative, which is very important because I feel like, you know, a healthy community is a strong community. So that's what we pushing, and of course the community service aspect of it.
You know, how do you, and I don't know if it's something that Legacy particularly does or if it's just something that you do on your own, how do you keep the pride of Como while still trying to combat, if you will, the gentrification that's going on?
You're getting off to my strategy now. No. I think we use the events like the Como Day Parade, for instance. I tell the history. And like I say, I get inside that intellectual territory. I've been privy enough. I have the advantage because my father worked decades for the parade. And so, you know, I've sit around him and his friends at the domino table and I listen to that old Como history. And you know, they will always say Como just didn't happen. And so they would give me I would learn the history. I learned the history. I was able to, like I say, dig off into what Doc Wilburn was about. And I just, hey man, 1905 EST. And so now I'm starting to see the young kids, even the street cats going around say, yo, this community 120 years old. We still pushing, right? So I sell the history and let them know that history gives us that political time of day. It lets us know where we must go and what we must become.
No, I love that. You know, so talk about Como Fest.
Yeah. So Como Fest basically builds off that momentum of the 3rd of July. You know, the 3rd of July, actually, we can't talk about the 3rd of July without talking about the Como Day Parade. It was that excitement of what we were celebrating. We established in the community. And so when you understand that the parade itself was an objective and the purpose of the parade was to build institutions and businesses, now you're getting off into what real freedom is, right? And I think that's what Doc Wilburn was trying to do. And so the first institution and businesses that he built was the Eugene Crozier, the first community center. And, you know, like I said, I've been privy to a lot of inside information about Doc Wilburn that needs to be put out. That the man had plans of building a bank, hospital, So he already had the Como Weekly. So everything he did was an objective. And so with that excitement that we're celebrating the fact that we built the community, right? Is at that time, we talking 50 years later, when he started the parade, that we celebrating the fact that Como was established by our ancestors in 1905. That's what kind of birthed that energy, that momentum on the 3rd of July. And so that's what Como Fest came about, because it kind of got lost in translation, right, throughout the years, the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, of what the 3rd of July, what Como Day Parade was all about. And, and we try to, it kind of reminds us of that old African proverb, it only takes one generation to forget.
Since creating Como Fest, do you think it's been beneficial and helpful of getting people back engaged into the community, or is there still work to be done?
Oh, of course, there's still a lot of work to be done. But like I said, we have seen some impact. We had some impact. There again, you just say, for instance, you talk about the cemetery. Now we mowed that cemetery. As a result of that, what happened in 2020, we've been mowing the cemetery ever since, for free, for nothing. And so now you got pushing that history, pushing that narrative. Now you got people buying plots in the cemetery, want to be buried in the cemetery. So Como Fest brings, it's a family-oriented event. So you bringing all the little kids, you bringing all the elders, they walking out there on their canes, coming down there to listen to some good music, but they know what they celebrate. And I think that's the history becomes the byproduct of that.
As a person who didn't grow up in Fort Worth, sometimes you hear the misperception of what Como is, and a lot of communities of color, if you will.
Right.
What's a stigma or reputation that's unfairly characterized with Fort Worth that you want to dispel or myth to break about Como?
I think just talking from a street perspective, especially to the youth. And I think I like to remind them that Como ain't always been no hood. And I think that's what they don't get. They refer to it as a hood. And I think that's where we making a lot of our impact at. Now they begin to kind of see the history in their face. Like, it's been since 1905, I didn't know that, right? So now it begins to kind of build a certain type of reverence or respect for what their ancestors built. And I think that's what I like to dispel, especially among the youth, that Como ain't always been no hood.
No, I love that because one, it was a neighborhood that had the duality even before for you, and I think that's good. I think that's powerful too.
Yeah.
But the question I do have for you is, you're doing a lot of good work in the Como and also through Fort Worth. Legacy, Como Fest, the parade. But how do you want to be remembered as your legacy and the work that you're doing in Como?
I answer it like this. To me, it's impact over recognition. I think I want to be able to, I always use this analogy. I want to just be able to drive up Horn Street one day, Ty, and just go inside a restaurant that's owned by one of my brothers, sit down and watch the screens around, drink a cold beer and watch the game. I think once I can do that, I think I'm satisfied.
No, I like that. I love that. And Marcus, I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down and have this conversation. Your Como pride just oozes out for you, man. And
I appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to being at not only Como Fest at the parade. Randomly enough, my mother-in-law's been getting her hair done by Miss Denise in Como for about 20 plus years, man. So.
Hey, man, we was kids growing up. The 3rd of July, Como Fest was like, we had the same excitement that we had on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. So
it's that.
Man, well, thank you again for joining the conversation, man. Look forward to working with you and help pouring into the community.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man.
What a great conversation. We learned a lot about the why and the purpose behind Marcus and the work that him and Legacy Como is doing in their community. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to like and subscribe. You'll never know who's going to be next on Take This Down.